I do want to get your thoughts here on the latest news surrounding Genesis here about the outgrowth from the FTX collapse, and more importantly, about the questions here about some of these, I guess, if you will, lending or borrowing sort of products that were attached to some of these coins.
Yeah, sure. So the first thing I would say is the Genesis problem is not a new problem in crypto. This is related to last week's FTX bankruptcy filing. When FTX collapsed, there were a lot of people and institutions that had money on FTX. It appears that Genesis was one of them, and it's not able to withdraw. I think they said about $175 million. They had, last I checked, a little less than $3 billion outstanding in loans. So, it's about 5%, so it's not a death knell. But it does create a problem if everybody's rushing to get their money out. That's the problem that they ran into. So
is it also a problem that everyone is so, I don't want to say reliant on one platform or one exchange, but if one goes down and everyone else is starting to feel the ripple effects of that, was that in itself an issue?
Yeah, you'd have to say in retrospect, yes. The fundamental issue wasn't keeping things on exchanges, though that is not something I would advise people to do, but it was what the exchange did with the tokens on its exchange. And as you know, people like FTX took it and lent it out or hypothecated it and then couldn't get it back. And then you have the whole chain reaction. So in this case, Genesis had a product that allowed you to send them your Bitcoin and then they would earn a yield on it and return a yield and they'd keep a profit. I don't think enough customers asked how they were actually doing that, because obviously the problem is they lent it out to people who now can't pay it back.
I want to ask you a question here, William, about regulation. We heard from Janet Yellen a little bit earlier today, a statement by the Treasury, her advocating for a more explicit and descriptive form of regulation for the crypto industry. There are still a lot of questions here about not only who would regulate it, but how and whether the expertise is there to do it effectively.
Yeah, so anytime there's a problem in markets, particularly financial markets, there's an impulse to, quote, just do something. And I have never seen that work well when it's been done without the legislators being educated about what the problems are. So Congress has really neglected crypto for, 10 plus years.
Right.
There does need to be some education and understanding of what it is, how it works, how it's different from traditional markets. What I would not want to see is for them to impose the U.S. banking laws, done a lot in the 1930s,
right,
for a different situation, and put those rules in place around crypto. Crypto is a different asset class and needs different things.
Well, but at its heart, you talk about some of those banking regulations here. That seems to be what at least is on the table from what we know right now in Washington, something that would effectively move a lot of your industry under that umbrella that traditional banks, or at least traditional finance companies, have. Then what's the value proposition for crypto and decentralized finance if they're going to be regulated in the same way as a JP Morgan?
Well, first I would say all of those regulations, or a great deal of those regulations done in the 1930s and the 40s, were done because customers' deposits were guaranteed by the U.S. government, meaning the taxpayers. When the U.S. government is guaranteeing things, they have to really understand everything. In this case, crypto, there are no U.S. government guaranteed bank deposits. If you put tokens or coins on an exchange or somewhere else and you lose them, you absorb all of those losses. That's the reason there's no contagion outside of the financial sector. In terms of what I would like to see, if we're going to regulate, and regulation is a big word, you don't know exactly what that means, but for sure transparency in terms of what exchanges have on their balance sheet, regular reporting for that I'd like to see.
Yeah.
I'd also like to see if they are doing anything with customer deposits. Be very explicit about it. I think a lot of investors got lured into a promise of a return and didn't really understand the risks involved.